renting a place. Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like a full church.
Yeah.
That's style.
Yeah.
What was this graphic artist thinking of?
I don't know. You think it's going from good color to
When I saw the carpet there, I mean, it's a story for me. I can remember it was pastor's carpet, you know, and we just felt the stage could look better if we brought the carpet. And on Sunday morning, we would literally go carry pastor's carpet and bring it to church. So I still remember when we finally now bought a carpet. And I didn't say it, so we got it on a Saturday. I think it was Joseph that went to go and pick it up and all. So the guy that used to come and roll up the carpet in my house every Sunday morning, fold it, carry it to church. You know, I didn't tell him. You know, I just waited for that proud pastor moment. So I waited for the guy to come. So he was about to start rolling up, and I'm like, no, we now have a carpet. We have a carpet in church. Like, yeah, oh wow.
Yeah.
But I think for me also, just looking at all of that, there's I remember strongly how we weren't waiting to be perfect to do anything. It was really just thriving and enjoying what God can do with ordinary people.
I think I'm, remembering it, just reliving when this slide, just now that we are saying that the, colors are not, but there was just, we saw it, we read it, there was so much faith and expectation and just passion for all God was doing.
The way people sat, the hearts. I mean, there was this day we had, there was a wedding at the venue. We got there to set up and we could not just do anything because they were still dancing inside. And we had to stay for them to finish and please go. Then they finished, come and sit down. Remove your decoration and let us do our own. And then, what struck me the most was how, when you see pastor picking broom and this person cleaning chair, it was not a this is your responsibility thing. Yeah. It was a this was our let's get service ready.
It was almost like this is our best and we would give that to God. Out of a deep belief that God is going to use our ordinary to do something extraordinary.
So there was this, we were showing up. If you look at the backdrop kept improving consistently. But it was just us showing up and then we're getting better at our crafts. Of course, there were times that it was not so good.
Talk about the worship team.
I remember particular Easter moment. Sunday morning, one thing after the other kept going wrong. Like everything went wrong.
One person after the other also. Everybody went wrong.
But there was this thing of, guys, we can't settle for this. We can't settle for the excuses. One of our core values is excellence. I know you're sacrificing a lot, but there must be that sense of I must be able to do things well.
It wasn't just excellence for the sake of it, but for that one person. So right from the word go, it was always about this may be this person's one chance.
Yes.
This may be, and we talking about that missional sense that we had at that time. Everybody that we saw, we see the pictures in 2015, from 2014, we see the crowd. Virtually everybody who came as a crowd was not from some billboard or something. Very few people said maybe they saw with how much social media presence did we even have at that time. But it was in my world, we're always about that Zacchaeus. This may be somebody's, who can I bring again? To have a Jesus encounter.
The sound within, then I put some pressure on it to get it out of. When I think of 2016, that period, I think of how a lot of what started out from just a willingness and passion many times and all of that, now started to find structures that could carry it. And there started to be some method to our madness. We started to have to say, okay, we need to have small groups, we need to have units, we need to have, okay, so now who is going to be in charge of this? And what God did with a lot of that was that He then used that to propel a lot of growth. And there was a lot of what we, were doing. I
think there was a lot of what God was doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was so clear. That was so. There was just that sense of God is with us, and in just ways like we were saying about, we were seeing God not necessarily that we can say, oh, this is like the biggest thing that's happened, 2,000 or 100,000 or that happened, but there was just all those witnesses that what we're doing is not ordinary. That just seeing somebody say yes to Jesus, and you're like, I couldn't make this happen myself. Just seeing the willingness, just seeing, so there was a sense of all that we were doing, but there was also just that strong sense of, what God is doing something.
Wow. Really? That was doing this.
2016, Sycamore Church came into the picture. So we've been friends for almost 11 years now.
Yeah.
We met in 2011.
2010.
Yeah, 2010 when we were SS1. I don't know, one way or another, we just became friends. We got really close.
Yeah.
We both grew up in very strong Christian homes.
Yeah.
Despite that, our lives were, we bonded over a lot of the wrong things. Coming into UI was like, okay, finally I get to live this life, and it took us down a path of a lot, really.
The overnight parties, the alcoholism,
the lustful expressions, really.
A lot of it.
Addictions, womanizing.
So there was this one party we went for, and there was a lot of drinking. It's morning now. I get downstairs, go outside like, where's my guy? She absolutely passed out.
Yeah.
I literally had to carry Bamshe like a baby. Carry him.
That happened. I think it's great that we can laugh about it now, but then we thought it was fun, but I think deep down we always knew that it was really empty. It was It was searching, and even beyond the wild stuff, the searching went on to wanting to do stuff. You wanted to make a name for yourself, do business, money, ambitions. 2016, Sycamore Church came into the picture.
I remember the first time I came to church. For some reason that morning, I just remembered that there was a Sycamore Church and it wasn't too far. It was a cooperative hall just down the road from where we used to stay in Aminawe. And I walked into church that day. I knew in those moments that you're probably going to find something here.
I don't know if it was the first or second Sunday you went that I didn't go, and Toby came into the room excited and was telling me about the message. Pastor preached an Easter message. Yes. Toby was excited. He was basically re-preaching the entire message to me, and I'm like, we don't do this. This is not us. This is not what we talk about. And I think that was like a major thing for me, that my guy went to church and is excited about the word, and I'm like, okay, you know what, I'll come. And I went, and believe me, I think it was culture shock, but the word spoke to me.
Culture shock.
I think the word spoke to us really Sunday after Sunday.
Finished! Are you that dumb? Jesus didn't say I am finished. He said it is finished.
I think the word spoke to us really Sunday after Sunday. It's like, wait, are you watching our lives? It's like your life is on X-ray on display, and then you're just picking it one after the other. And it started a journey for us individually, and we never really talked about it. Every time pastor made an altar call, I would be holding myself. When you are convicted, so many thoughts. And Toby would usually sit beside me, and I'll look, is he raising up his hand? Like, is he raising up his hand? I'll not see his hand up. I'm like, oh, myself, I'm not raising up my hand. And
I think maybe one of the times that you were actually closing your eyes, I raised up my hand. To
slide.
It's never like that. And I remember I rededicated my heart to God. The message struck me that day, I remember. But maybe even what struck me the most in Pastor T calling was, he made one statement. He said, today is the day of salvation. Please do not harden your heart. And for some reason, it was like some hard shell around my heart was just trying to crack open. And I remember I raised up my hand that day.
The turning point for me was one evening, that was August 2016. We had this friend from church, Misan, come over, and randomly, very randomly, he says, let's pray. It was kind of weird but cool, and I guess that's what happens when you let Christian friends or friends from church into your world. Just right there in that prayer, I don't know, I can't explain it beyond the Holy Spirit just really convicted me, and I started crying. And I remember just texting Pastor Tolu then, and I said, I think I need Jesus.
The burden behind starting Sycamore Church in simplest of terms was about longings. When I think about it, longings on one hand of Zacchaeus, which I think in some ways every one of us longing to see Jesus, that sense of desire in hearts. And I think on the other side of that conversation, so you know how the Bible says Zacchaeus was short, he was crowded out and all of that. So like a longing for a substance of who Jesus is, but just feeling crowded out, feeling like the impossibility. And so that's on one side of it. But I think on the other side of it was like maybe a longing of heaven to also reach people. That I just think God worked in our hearts. And so when I think about it, I would say, the burden behind starting Sycamore Church was just to reconcile those longings, something heaven was heavy about and something people were so needing about. Just that simplicity of an encounter between Zacchaeus and Jesus.
I think, like you said, it was basically for people far from God. This thing about the unreached, the unsaved, needing a home, a church, a base to find Jesus. And that was one of our strong drive at the beginning, which still is today as the vision keeps opening. And year in, year out, we've seen God really show himself in how this Zacchaeus is leave the crowd and come into the company and find help in a Savior that loves them so much.
Well, there's this expression that really defined that season for us, and it was a paradigm shift. God used church to really transform us. In April 2017, it was his birthday, and I got him a journal. I wrote a note in it. I remember saying that, just going over how proud I was of what we found and the journey we are on, and how that I look forward to the day that he would lead worship and I will preach on the same stage. That was 2017. Fast forward to January 3 to 2020. Yeah, 2021. We're in 2021 already. That happened. And I don't think it's really a story, or the highlight of the story is about being on stage or the privilege that we get, but I think it's just a story of the grace of God, how God could literally pick two people that were going left, like in every regard, and bring them to this point of pursuing God and giving themselves to just create this opportunity for someone else,
And now to be able to stand where I stand, and
helping people worship,
help people, connect with God on that level. It's a huge privilege.
Here's to your goodness. Here's to your freedom.
To think that those same guys that did all of that would be the same people to really own and carry God's heart for people. We still don't deserve it. We don't deserve it.
Greatest privilege in life.
I just know that God's love, his grace have been so tangible.
Yeah. It's actually real.
It's very real. It's very, very real.
I think those three words
at
the bottom of the Sycamore logo, like a summary of what our lives, really. Life, passion, purpose. Like literally we were dead, living in deadness, and we found life in God's house. Our passions were way misplaced, and we found true passion for God, for his house and for his people right here in Sycamore Church.
Again, I think we're totally clueless about who we should have been, what our lives were supposed to be. But now we don't just know God's purpose, we are living in it.
Living right in it. Yeah. And it's the biggest privilege.
Absolutely. It's the biggest privilege ever.
It's everything.
Yeah.
We wanted to do Sunday morning services and we needed a venue. So they initially said they won't give us this place for a church. But then God opened the doors and we started. Cooperative Hall gradually more or less became a home for us. In those days, during service I would look out of the window and wonder whether people didn't get the description or they just don't know the venue. Then a while later we got to afford some funny curtains on the window and my looking out career had to stop. Gradually we started filling out the hall and we added another service that also filled out. Whoa, second service days were some electric passion. When we began looking at adding a third service at Cooperative after we had stayed for like 3 years, we felt God tell us it was time to move to the International Conference Center.
That move to ICC was a big step of faith
Was it
for us.
biggest at the time?
I can say that leap of faith.
It was simply a decision to step out in faith. So it wasn't as though there had been a constraint. So it's not like to say Cooperative had said, okay, you can't have service here again. It was just this of sensing that God, there was more. Just this sense of this is not where all that is.
Walking into that new venue, the truth was, it was a door only God could open, and the way the doors opened, it was just nothing short of miraculous. People usually come to church and say, for your church to be using this place, you have many rich people, you are that, and for us that was just like a street joke, like we know what's up here,
There was a certain level of responsibility that was now expected of us at this time based on what God had brought into our hands, and all
that season of ICC and all just brought us to a phase where it was like, okay, now God is giving us so much. What are we going to do with it?
Put your best foot forward. Choose to live every day at your best, because the biggest opportunities of your life will not come with a signboard. They will come somewhere in the midst of what you are doing with every ordinary opportunity. You know what? We owe the world love. We owe the world the gospel. We owe the world the message of Jesus. We owe it. That's why we
started to now see that some things will not happen except we do something about it, except we make room for it.
We're able to reach a lot more across demographics, but also just in terms of what we're dreaming. So and that was when around then we started from Daddy with Love. And then we were deliberately like, what can we do? What can we make happen? That Christmas season, I remember going from supermarkets and we would just storm a supermarket, play guitars, give out love cards, and then going into a bank, going into a mall, and everybody was just excited to reach all and even get into bars. I remember still going to bars that night, and everybody was just excited to reach across board. And so I think, like you said, in many ways we actually started to dream more demography, more reach, more influence. That we could stretch out our hands more and just have that sense of out of what God was working in us. There was more that could happen through our hands. And I think that was really beautiful. But that was that kind of time when God gave us a really good location, and so it was the kind of church that somebody could just walk into. There are quite a number of testimonies of how I just saw some people going inside and I followed them and made a decision for Jesus. So
I was new in Ibadan. That's like some 3 months after I came, so I'd been looking for a church to join, and I had a whole lot of things that made me just decided that I won't go to church again. I needed to make a transaction with the ATM in front of First Bank that Sunday morning, and when I was done, I just saw one inscription, welcome home, and young guys were walking in there, and there were no really differences between the way I looked and the guys that were going in, so I decided to stroll around. Now service started, somebody just walked on the stage and I was on a ripped jean, seriously. The lady sitting by my side, I turned to her, I was like, please, is this your pastor or do we expect another? But I sat back and he just started talking about middle moments, and to tell you the truth, it was like he knew I would come, and I dedicated my life to Christ.
Let him see you, let him know you. God bless you. God bless you.
Of the truth, it has been another level of work with God since that 1st of July.
Initially, it looked like going into Havana. There was really a lot of space. I remember walking into the hall and just thinking, how would feel this large hall, you know, until it became a question of, are we going to do 2 services? Just in God's own way. And so we again had to start saying, oh, let's double up on our structures. How can we be more closer to everybody, you know, just as a church system. So we didn't need it then. But it was like the wisdom of God to say, create this because the days are coming. And so the more we were doing it, then the more God was just sending people, and just the privilege to be able to reach people.
I stand here now and I'm spitting flows about the flow of his blood, punchlines about the punches he received, but it wouldn't have been so if not for his life, his soul, so he could rip mine and yours. Heaven has become our destination because of his stopover at Hell's Mission.
Our first creative show was 2018.
2018, yes. 2018 was the first show.
So at the James party, we were just serving ourselves, we were entertaining volunteers, but then in 2018, it became something that we're using to serve a larger audience,
community,
a community, and over time that's grown something that is now online and is literally worldwide.
So I remember the 2017 James party and asking them, let's see the program, what are you guys going to do? And they said, oh, Campus Connect people are going to. I'm just like, okay, well, let them just come and entertain us. Like, let's just. It's cheap comedy, you know, low budget comedy and stuff like that. So they had a good time. They did all that they wanted to do and all. And you know, I still remember just being in a meeting just some months later and just saying, "Oh, we're going to do great show. You know, use those guys and blah blah blah." And, you know, and it was just amazing how it was really just God saying louder.
Oh my God! This is the peak. This is the peak of despondence and alacrity and ineptitude.
Do you know what fabric this is?
No, I don't know.
It's called husband material.
You know, and so what Crave just taught us, like, just was one, there was this much gift and grace even within our house. That there was a platform for. So not every gift, not every gifting and talent and skill is going to be a Sunday morning platform. But it's amazing how just from there and through the years, people have been able to find a strong voice of service, of creativity, and of reach just through the platforms that the church has been able to bring. So it's beautiful just seeing God being true to his word.
As at that 2018, so we had come into so much, it was more like, so the church had changed, so to speak, the outlook had changed, and there was this call that, you know what, there's new ground in front of you, pioneer again, like this is a new season.
It's 2019, God calls us to pioneer again.
Starting from the platform that we now had, with all the people that we now had, can we dream again? Can we dream possibilities again for what was, you know, in our hands?
Remember when, from the early days, those early meetings we were sitting in 2014, it's this strong thing God would always prompt on our hearts, and we always say that a good surfer
Yes.
is not
Those
somebody
that
who
write
creates
on the
waves,
tides.
but recognizes the waves that God gives, and then he writes them. And so, what was a wave from God in 2014? And we were riding that. The question was now for us whether we were going to say, because we have found our wave to be a beautiful wave and we have loved it, to in some way be emotionally attached to that wave, or to say, you know what, God is giving us a new wave. And so in many ways, I feel like it was same spirit, same passion, but a new wave. And it was in many ways us learning to ride new wave. I remember having, like you mentioned, even making decisions and saying, oh, you know what, School of Purpose was no longer to be in that small office room where we just have the class. School of Purpose was now going to be online, But what we didn't know was that in many ways God was preparing us for a COVID lockdown season. Just learning to stretch our imagination in an online space. How could we engage in? How do we do all of that? So it was like God bringing a wave just right in time. And us having to make that tough choice to say, you know what, we love all that God has done, but our deepest loyalty is to say, let's ride the wave that God has been on. And so for me, I'm always praying that would constantly be our passion as a church, that we would never be more attached to a wave than the God who actually gives waves. We will never be more attached to a time than the God who is actually the God of our time. So, I'll be honest.
Vision for 2020, pretty much what we find every year is that it feels like a build-up. Just on one hand, out of like that burden out of which church started in itself, and then it's like every year God is just opening a new chapter of that. But the other thing we always seem to find is that God opens up a chapter that is like in sync with the year in every sense that we're about to live in. So we were just hearing it in that sense of more room and God expanding things. But I think as the year played out even more and more, we found that this was not just a word in a general sense, but it was actually a word in terms of the year we were about to walk in.
At the start of the year, it seemed like, when we moved into a new venue, it seemed like the height of it, like if God doesn't do anything again this year, that's just fine, And then somehow there was lockdown. And then we pioneered an online community.
Some of the things that we had to deal with were not things that we could have prepared for. I'm really thankful for the grace that God gave us, the wisdom, the strength, and all of that, just to make sure that what was before us, we were able to face what was before us. And I think one of the things that God really used, we always say that the big resource that God gives is man. And we saw people come up, take up the challenge, sacrifice. Very, very big sacrifices. Our online community started or was birthed in that space. We saw people come around, have discussions about what was taught in church. Online, we could serve different people, different time zones.
The Zoom, the online, our Holy Life group that I had was one of my major highlights of 2020 for me. I was able to connect with people with very, very wonderful individuals. At the end of the day, when I look back at the year, I could see God just working through each and every one of it, through the whole situation and everything. And I just had a deeper appreciation for how much He loves or He cherishes me. And I think that's where church really came in for me. Sundays where you just be ready to just give up and then just say, oh, things will not work out, things will not be the same. There was just this encouragement around. I had people who were there to encourage me through the low times, were there to hold me accountable through when I was not acting right, I guess. And then people that were there that celebrated with me during the great times.
So I and Debbie get to lead discussions in the online community every Sunday and Wednesday. And it's been such an amazing time, amazing privilege. We have friends from all over the world, literally. The lockdown was really hard for me personally, but having that was like having a sense of belonging again and just the opportunity to serve and all
2020 as a year was a lot of unprecedented. We had never been here, leading a church through a pandemic, what that looks like, being able to serve people, reach people, be effective in ministry.
We had to start thinking of how church can be relevant to people where they are now. So what does loving Jesus look like in a pandemic? What does it look like in not even having a job after waiting all this year? What does it look like in being inflicted with COVID? What does it? And I feel that was the beauty of how to see that the gospel of Jesus can go through, can transcend generations, seasons, times, changing circumstances. I think it was really beautiful to see that unraveling in every our church.
A lot of it was totally unprecedented, and so making all these decisions was just leaning on God part time and trying to find the wisdom for it. And so coming back to church on one hand, with some of the restrictions and what would service even look like and all of that was a burden in itself. But I think what we just tried to do was to stay faithful with what the opportunities in our hands were. And so for everything we could do, we tried to be faithful with our stewardship. We tried to make sure that we were keeping that focus on Jesus, which is always the burden. And so whether it's on a screen or whether you get to be in a room, but that we can constantly just be pointing people towards Jesus.
It was super amazing. I remember we were going to go back to church. I was saying, I don't think I'm ready for physical service. Let's still have some more online. But then we got back to church and then it seemed like, so I feel more room, got excited, or got bigger, got bester by every unveiling part.
Well, when we look at the season as a whole, I think we can be grateful as a church that God really did bring us into more room in terms of growth in people, then growth in depth of people getting discipled, people getting to become real followers of Jesus, and then even online, our many more expressions that we saw God bring us into, the more people that we could serve and all of that. So I think we can just be grateful that God gave us a word of more room, and He really did bring us into that. So in the vision that God gives us, or the vision that we try to say, this is our focus, this is why God made Sycamore Church, to say that we are an elevation for someone to see Jesus. We've seen that happen, and because of that, we've seen decisions for Jesus. We've seen people say, I'm being transformed by the life of Jesus that I've experienced.
In that same journey of how God continues to open up every year into that sense of where we stand as a church, in the realities of what's the burden on our hearts as a church, and how it plays out in where the world is in reaching people and all of that, really just felt God drew our hearts to that space of life after the flood. What would it look like on the other side of a flood? What if I was Noah's son, or Noah, and I was in the ark, and there was that whole flood, and there was that whole storm? Everything you had dealt with all it's unprecedented. You never saw this coming. You've seen your life shaken. You've seen so much lost, and what have you. And what would it feel like on that day when, the bird just came back with that olive branch and says, you know what, there's a new world, there's new possibilities, there's new fruitfulness that is possible. Like there's a new thing that is possible here. What would you feel like stepping out of that ark? And I really think that has shaped a lot of where we are right now, what God is saying to us about the year ahead of us, that in many ways we have gone through the tryings, and it has been on the back of a really difficult year in many regards. But I just think in so many ways God is just inviting us to the power of the new. He's just inviting us to say, can we dream in a whole new way? Can we believe that there are new possibilities, there's new vision, there's new reach, there's new expressions, that the floods and the storms that came did not just come in vain. It didn't just come and steal off us, and then here we are just lost. No, it came, and if we would really hear the heart of heaven, I think it's a refreshing for something more that is ahead of us. And so it's like right now we have the right to a new intensity, we have the right to a new sense of passion, a new sense of possibilities, a new sense of dreaming. It's like it just opens it all up to us, and what are we going to do with it? And so it feels like stronger than ever before that those words in Isaiah 43 about how it says, look, lift up your eyes, behold, I'm doing a new thing. It's just that kind of season in front of us, that God is committing himself to saying there's a new thing. And if we would dream at that level to which God calls it to, I just really believe that we would be walking in things that we never imagined. I really believe that we'll be walking in just that space and seeing God work in our hearts, working through us in ways that we have never imagined, but that the floods and the storms didn't leave us the way they met us. That it really worked in us something that we can rise on the other side and say, this is the power of me.
Okay, so here's thanking everyone that has been in life of our church from the beginning, the middle, the here, the now, today, however or whenever you joined in. We don't make light of your many sacrifices, of your community, of your love, your prayers for us, our family, our church. We want to thank our leaders, volunteers, everyone that has in one way or the other been a part of church. We truly value you. We love the fact that you get to come on this journey with us, and we say God bless your heart. God is a rewarder. He never forgets our labor of love. And so let's keep at it. Let's keep loving. Let's keep living. And let's keep dreaming this life that God has called us to.
Yeah, just to say that, it's a beautiful journey. It's been a beautiful journey, and one of the things that makes it beautiful is just the people that we get to do it with. And so for us, we'd always say that Christianity is not just about believing, it's also about belonging. And belonging to a fantastic traveling company, the people of our church, just beautiful hearts, beautiful souls. Thank you for all that you are, and that we get to, do life together. We're looking forward to a great year ahead. We're looking forward to all that God is going to do in your lives, in our church, and, just in this community of faith. And so let's keep winning. Let's stay strong for it. Let's stay believing together. Let's dream together about an amazing year that God has ahead of us.